Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Love Her podcast.
We're so happy to have you guys all here for another episode. Last week, we kind of dived a little bit into my story and I explained a lot about my life and what brought me here today. And now we are happy to dive into Nya's story, a little interview style. So we're super excited.
Yeah, and we are still testing out the whole virtual kind of thing. And it's interesting that we're telling each other stories because I'm curious to know what it would have been like if we were in the same room too, because I got very emotional last week.
Probably a lot more tears.
I know. Maybe it's a good thing we were in the same room
Maybe.
because I'm a crybaby. So it's probably a good thing that we are doing these virtually.
Yes, but I still think even it being virtual, I feel like it's given us an opportunity to get to know each other more, just you and I in general. Last time you learned a lot about me, and I'm so excited
Mhm.
to see your life through your lens, and I know that our audience is also definitely looking forward to that too.
Yeah, I don't know why I'm nervous. I am a
I
little
guess I'll
nervous.
start off with the question just to kind of
Okay.
ease us into it.
Yeah.
What is like your earliest childhood memory? Because I know some people have a super sharp memory of their childhood and others don't. So I'm curious if you have a really early one.
So, this is actually something that I had to kind of work through in therapy because so much of my childhood I shoved into like a trash can and didn't want to think of it. I really, really struggled with remembering so much of my childhood because I remember being younger and thinking of the moments that made me sad and literally taking the vision of the moment, crumbling it into a piece of paper and throwing it out of the window. And that was so much of my coping that I did it so often that I was like, "Oh my gosh, was I there?" Like we have another cousin, Mia, who I grew up with. We were neighbors, and so many times within the last like 5 years, she'd be like, "Oh, do you remember when we did this?" I'm like, "Girl, that was not me." And she'd be like, "No, I have a picture. Like you were there." I'm like, "Are you sure?" I was there, but I probably wasn't there. So it's funny that you asked that because on this healing journey that I've been on, I can now remember more of my childhood. I'm still knocking down those walls that I have kind of built up. But my favorite memory is that my uncle actually was staying with us. So I was born in Massachusetts and I moved around a lot growing up, but I lived in Massachusetts from like age 1 to 3. And it's so funny that I remember this because he's the best uncle ever. He was living with us, and I am still to this day am obsessed with French fries. Like that is my guilty pleasure. Some people it's sweets, some people it's like ice cream, French fries. If you put French fries in front of me, I'll finish the whole plate. Anyways, I'd wake him up every morning that he stayed with us and I'd be like, "Can you go get me French fries?" And he would take me every single morning. So that every time I think of that, I just want to text him and be like, "That is a core memory. Thank you." Yeah.
That is so true to your personality too. Because listen, we like to eat, okay?
Hungry children. We were such hungry children. I don't know why. Yeah, no, that's still me. Like if he was living here, I'd probably like, "Do you want to go and get French fries?" I say that to Mackenzie early in the morning. I'm like, "I need some potatoes, breakfast potatoes, please,
Extra salt.
extra salt."
Um, but I am curious. So you lived in Massachusetts until you were 3. Can you kind of walk us through where you went after that and what your life was like in those following years?
Yeah, so my parents actually were both in the military. I'll kind of back up a little bit. They were both in the military. They met in the military. My mom actually got pregnant by my dad in the military. She got out, had my brother. They stayed together. And then they both lived in Fall River, Massachusetts together. I don't have a lot of memories from those times, but I do remember then moving to Savannah, and that's where I lived. Well, not Savannah, right outside of Savannah. I say Savannah, so nobody knows where Richmond Hill is. I actually grew up in a very, very, very small town called Richmond Hill, Georgia. About 30 minutes outside of Savannah. If you're from there, you know. If you're not, you probably will never know. But I lived there up until about age 13. And then I lived in Virginia Beach. So I went from Massachusetts to Richmond Hill to Virginia Beach, and now I live in Atlanta. And that is a testament to how my life has kind of been, because it's been a lot of moving around, a lot of moving parts, a lot of feeling like I don't have stability. I feel like my parents also had so much going on and so much they were trying to figure out, that they moved us in the midst of all of that. And I can kind of get more into that. But yeah, I went from living near family in Fall River to then moving to South Georgia. And if you know anything about Georgia, it is a very, very, very southern state. I live in Atlanta now, and everybody who is in Atlanta says, there's Atlanta and then there's Georgia. I lived in Georgia. The town that I grew up in, the population of black to white was very, 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 very different. I was the only black girl in my classroom. I was the only black cheerleader. It was a huge shift, but I know that my parents wanted me to live there because they thought that it would be a great education. They thought it would be a great life. They thought that, it would be something that really benefited me. And now that I'm older, I see that and I understand that, and I'm so grateful for it. But at the time, it's very hard for me being in a space where I was the only black girl, black child. I really, really struggled with my identity in those spaces. And I just remember I crack jokes about it about myself now, but after I crack the joke, I'm like, maybe I shouldn't crack that joke. But when I was younger, I remember being in the classroom and the teacher would turn off the lights and some kid would always yell, "Where's Nyia?" And I literally wanted to melt in my seat every single time that happened, to the point where I was like, please don't turn off the lights. Please don't turn off the lights, because I was the only black kid in the room. I didn't want anybody to point that out. And actually, with it being Black History Month, I posted on my story a message about loving my hair, because being in a space where everybody just has this luscious blonde hair and I don't. I would get made fun of. Why is your hair frizzy? Why is it this? Why is it that? Whatever. And that was also something that I struggled with. Just like I said, my whole identity, from being black to not having the hair to not having the family, because the area we lived in too was a wealthier area. My family wasn't wealthy. We moved here, lived with my aunt, lived in a home that wasn't that magnificent at all by any means. So much of that was going on. And I really, really, really struggled with that as a kid.
And did you find yourself kind of wanting to conform to what everyone else was like? Like, can you kind of walk through that, being in a white space and not sure how you fit into that?
100%. I feel like as kids, that's all we want to do. We just want to fit in. Like we want to be
Yeah.
like the cool kids. We want to, it's such a huge part of who you are as a kid, is you want to be like everybody else. And that while you're developing, the last thing you want to do is look different or feel different or have something about you that makes people talk about you. So 100%. As a kid, I never even realized my hair was curly. Like, of course, I knew it was, but my mom would perm my hair every 3 months. Like, it was like on the clock. She was perming my hair, flat ironing it. We would be in the bathroom before school every single morning, and I would be like, "Mom, you're not doing it right." And like, like it was just, we would argue back and forth. And now I just think about it and I'm like, God, my daughter is going to be something else. But it was just so a thing. And I think at the time, my mom also didn't understand why it was so important for me to have my hair look perfect, because I just dreaded walking into the classroom and somebody asking me something about it, or dreaded walking into a space where everybody has their hair a certain way. Or we even had this day, it was called Economics Day, where our school would set up all of these different shops, and they had a hair shop, and all of my friends would go in and get their hair braided, and I'd be like, Mom, I can't walk into the shop if my hair's not done, or they can't braid it. And like, people are going to ask me why, and I just didn't get it as a kid. So yeah, the conforming part was just such a small part of the piece that we all have to go through, but to be in that space where you are the one out of 30, 40, whatever kids, it's like that really takes a toll on your body image, on your just like your overall self-worth. And I really struggled with feeling good enough or pretty enough or smart enough in so many spaces. Yeah.
And I think it's a lot about the standard of beauty too. I
Yeah.
also grew up in predominantly white spaces, and it's just that the standard of beauty for white women is very different. Not that
Yeah.
one is prettier than the other, but it is the pin straight hair, the specific body type. That's what's
Mhm.
seen as the ideal. And when you're not that race and it's physically impossible for you to be that, it makes you feel not beautiful.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so it is a journey of kind of walking into that space. And I'd love it if you could kind of share how that evolved over the years and how you really did start to embody that self love.
Yeah, so I just have to come out and say that I don't know that I had the example of self love that I wish I would have had as a child. My mom and I have been on a journey, this healing journey together, because her and I went through a lot of things in the house that we lived in Richmond Hill. She was dealing with her own things, I was dealing with mine, and I think that as a little girl it is so important that you see your mom in a strong state, feeling empowered as a woman, feeling beautiful as a woman, feeling like she has a voice. And she struggled with that, and she admits to struggling with that, and I didn't realize that that was something that I needed at that state. It's something that I see now in my present life. I feel for her and love her so much because of the things that she was also going through, and we were kind of going through them together. But I think apart from me struggling at school, going home every day and seeing her struggling just kind of added on to the weight of that, added on to the weight of all of the normal things, similar to what we said, last week in your story, telling your story in your episode, when there's so much going on at home, but you're also still dealing with the other things, you kind of have to try and navigate how you process those. It's nice to think about those things. It's nice to kind of have the balance of the two when your home life is kind of chaotic. So when I was about 5 years old, my parents came to me and they mentioned that they were getting a divorce. That's actually one of the earliest memories that I have living in Richmond Hill, Georgia, because my parents both sat me on the couch and they said, Mommy and Daddy are getting a divorce. I remember my brother go, What? And I go, What's a divorce? What's that? And I don't remember what happened after that. I feel like my only memories are a lot of chaos, a lot of arguing, my parents trying to figure out how to navigate their finances. Like, they already weren't in the best places financially together. So individually, they had to go into like a fight or flight mode of survival within themselves. And with them being in those modes, it's kind of hard to also be who you need to be for your kids. I don't fault them for that because it's their first time in this lifetime doing it too. And life is not easy. So by no means do I fault them for that. I just think that with those two things, those two people having their individual struggles, it is difficult for a child in the middle of those struggles. So both of my parents met new people. They got remarried. My mom ended up marrying somebody that, in my personal opinion, was not someone that allowed her to have a voice. And I only say that because her and I have had many conversations and we've worked through this together. And if your mom, if you're listening, I love you. And I'm so fortunate for the conversations that we've had because it has helped me understand the place that you have been um, in the places you've been in, the places that you were in, and here we are today. But when I was younger, my stepdad was dealing with a sickness, and kind of similar to what you said, when you feel like you're so out of control of your surroundings or there's so much going on in your life where you don't feel like you have control of, certain people hone in and they control
Mhm.
whatever they can. And so I saw that in him and he moved in that way. He was very, very controlling of every single aspect of our house. He was extremely clean around the house, and it got to the point where we almost turned into little mates. And he had us on a schedule. It was like this day you were doing this, that day you were doing that. But it wasn't in the sense of like, these are your chores, you're getting paid for these chores. Like it felt very, 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 very extreme. And
Like,
I say
almost militant.
extremely, extremely militant because we would wake up in the morning, we would get ready for school, we had to make sure our rooms were clean, and then we would get sent off to school. And then as soon as we got home from school, we had a schedule listed every day where we had to do our homework for a certain time. And then after our homework was done, we had to clean the entire house. And he was so particular about how he wanted it done. We literally had to get on our hands and knees every single night and scrub the kitchen floor every single night, except for Sundays, because that was the day that we went to church. So we didn't clean. He was also very religious, extremely religious. So we had to pray around the bed every night. So we were on very, 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 very strict schedules every single day. Apart from being on strict schedules, we were also on a very strict expectation when it came to school. So if I made anything below a B, I was grounded for the rest of the week. Um, So every Monday morning, he would go in on his computer right before school and he would look at our grades. If we and we always did in my math classes, we would always do like these like minute tests where it was like you had like 5 questions and you had to answer a problem really fast. It didn't mean anything. Did you have to do them?
Yeah, the times tables.
Yeah, and then if you got, like, 2 wrong, you basically failed. So, the
Yeah.
teacher would put it in, but it wouldn't really do anything to your grade, but he would see that, and he would see it was below a B, and if I made below a B, I was grounded for the rest of the week. The punishments were not your typical, "Give me your phone," "You can't play with your friends." The punishments were intense. I could not leave my room for the entire week. I could not step foot out of my room, only get to go to the bathroom, and when he told me I could come out to eat. So it felt like being in solitary confinement every single day. And it wasn't just about school, it was if we didn't clean properly, I was grounded for the entire week. It was just whatever it was, whatever kind of day he was having. If we upset him, you were grounded. And that punishment was so, so, so intense. I felt like I was in jail being in that house to the point where I would make plans in my head to run away so often. Like, can I like get out this window? Could I call a friend? Could I, just so many things. And I just remember one time one of my friends actually saw me being like really sad at school and she wrote me a letter and she was like, I just want you to know that I love you. Or it was like something very sweet. And as I was walking out the door one day, I dropped it on the ground. He was also extremely strict about boys. He did not, I couldn't talk to a boy. I couldn't look at a boy, anything boys. Like he was just strict in so many different aspects, obviously. He thought the letter was from a boy. So he found the letter, read it, said, "This is from a boy. You are now grounded for 3 weeks because you know how I feel about boys." And I'm just like begging him. I'm like, please, 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 like, please, can we call the friend? Like he didn't care. He didn't care. It was what he said happened. Um, and I started to get a little sneaky with these punishments. So I would like find ways to make myself sane in this room. I would listen to the radio, or I'd find an old cell phone or whatever it was, and he would always find it. So it got to the point where he would take my TV out of my room. So I had no TV, no cell phone, no electronics, no radio. I would just have to sit there for days and just stare and just stare. So I started reading the Bible. Like, that was the only thing I was allowed to do, was read the Bible.
Oh my
Like,
gosh. I remember visiting you during this time and being in the house and seeing how strict he was, and doing the things like praying around the bed and stuff, but I never really understood the day to day and the imprisonment aspect of it. And
yeah,
you're a child. Any child is meant to be taught. You know, our mentor always says that when you have children, it's first you're a teacher, then a mentor, then a friend.
yeah,
But
yeah,
that's not teaching, that's dictating. And so
yeah,
there was no space for you to learn.
yeah.
How are you supposed to know truly what love is, what empathy is from other people, what kindness is from other people? How to be treated by a partner when you're just being dictated all the time? And that has to take a toll on not just your self-esteem, but your identity and how you view the world over time.
Yeah, yeah, I saw that in my life as I was older, because I sought out love in so many different ways, and a lot of times it was unhealthy because I didn't feel like I was shown the proper way to be loved. And I feel like even when I spoke out about things, I was shut up immediately, or I was put in this solitary confinement. So it was such a struggle to be able to navigate. Does my opinion matter? Do I deserve these things? I mean, am I good enough? On top of being in a school where I already felt that way, and then going home every day and feeling like nobody is giving me that, it was such a struggle growing up and seeing that. I mean, I just remember school was hard, but I would pray that something would happen where I wouldn't have to go home, because he was so up and down and his emotions were so unpredictable that I just never knew what I was going to walk into. Like, the day
Mm.
he found the letter on the floor, I had no idea he was gonna come in and be screaming, like, screaming at me, "You know how I feel, da da da," and now I'm in solitary confinement, and my friend just told me she loves me. You know what I'm saying? Like, as a kid, you're like, "I just can't do anything right. I can't do anything.
Yeah.
I can't even have a friend share her emotion with me without getting in trouble. I can't share my own emotion. I can't make my own decisions. Like, I couldn't even have friends really, because they would ask to hang out and I'd be grounded every single day. Like, you
Yeah.
know,
And how was your relationship with your mom at this time? Was there resentment? Because he wasn't your father, right? He was your
yeah.
stepfather. So there's that difficult dynamic there. Can you kind of walk us through how that manifested in your relationship with your mom?
So, because he was sick, he didn't work. He couldn't physically work because he was out also in and out of the hospital all the time. So my mom worked. He lived off of Medicare, I believe it's called, right? Medicaid. I think Medicare is for older people.
He was probably on disability, right?
Disability. Oh my gosh, yes. Sorry. He was on disability. I mean, if you know anybody on disability, if you're on disability, you know that it's not enough to provide for a family. Especially, we were at the time a
Especially in
family of 4
Georgia.
in Georgia, a family of 4, and the area we also lived in, like I said, it was a wealthy area. Like, it wasn't a cheap area. My mom worked 3, 4 jobs. She wasn't there. Like, she would come in and she would just walk into my room and see me crying, and she'd be like, "Why are you crying?" And I would tell her, and then she would go off into the room. I don't know what would happen from there. And then at one point he told me, "You need to stop telling your mother the things that happen." She is working too hard, and she does not need to know what goes on when she's at work. And so then one day she came in and I was crying again, and she's like, "What happened?" And I said, "He told me I couldn't tell you." And because he punished me so horribly, like he never physically hit me. But it was a lot of emotional abuse and
Mental abuse.
mental abuse. Yeah. So him telling me I can't tell my mom anything, I'm not telling her nothing. Like I'm going to do whatever I can to not have to be in the solitary confinement. And even when I did everything that I could, he still found something to make sure that I was like not going anywhere and not doing anything. So my mom, it seemed like when I was younger, it seemed like she didn't want anything to do with it because she had so much going on in her life. But now that I'm older and we've had conversations and her and I have worked through the things that we went through in that house, she told me, I tried to fight. I really did, but I didn't have a voice myself. Like I didn't even know how to stick up for myself. She was like, I know that I was being abused in my own way, and she has broken down and truly apologized to me for not even having her own voice. And when you don't have your own voice, how can you have it for somebody else?
Yeah.
So yeah, she really wasn't there. When I think of those moments, I see her walking in and out of the house because she was just like boom, 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 boom. Like I gotta get my money by tomorrow. Like she's always been that way. She's always been a very hard worker, and she's always gonna make ends meet all the time. So it was really just him. It was really him. Just him, me, and his daughter, and then my little siblings who were babies. And I kind of feel for his daughter because she did. I don't want to say he physically abused her, but he whooped her. Like I can't imagine being whooped and solitary confinement, but he never did that to me because my dad made it very clear he will never touch my child. My dad, he can be pretty intimidating when he wants to be, but yeah. So there was one summer where I had a boyfriend, and
How old were
he
you?
I was 13. I remember
Okay.
because I got an iPhone for my 13th birthday. Um, and that is a very pivotal part of the story, okay? I got an iPhone for my 13th birthday, and I was texting this boy that I had a crush on. We were like dating, whatever. At that time, I don't really know what dating is, but um, he ended up finding out about the boy. The next day, like the day after my birthday, takes the phone from me, takes the phone and says, "You are grounded for the entire summer." The entire summer. He lit and now that I've shared the solitary confinement, I'm like, I gotta be here for 3 months? Are you kidding? The
And
entire
no
summer?
school?
No school. No, now I have no escape, right? So I just call my dad and I'm like crying. I'm like, hyperventilating. I don't know what to do. Because it's one thing when your parents are like, I'm gonna beat you, da da da, and they don't mean it. But everything he said he was gonna do, he did, and he stuck to it. To the point where, like, sometimes he would extend it. He'd be like, oh, well, I didn't like that you did this, so 3 more days for you. Like, so he was very adamant about what he said. And so maybe he just said that out of anger, but I've been in here for 2 weeks. Like you've made me sit in here for 2 weeks. Why wouldn't you do a month? Why wouldn't you do 2 months, you know? So I told my dad about it, and he then was like, you should come and stay with me for the summer. Or he said, why don't you come and visit me? Stay with me for the summer. I can't really remember specifically what he said. But when I went and visited him, I remember he said to me, I love you. And I know you love your mom, but you're not going back there. And I never went back. I never went back. I mean,
Mm.
my dad knew how bad it was. Everybody, I feel like everybody kind of knew. And I think as I got older, I got so angry at the adults that just let it happen, like just let it play out.
Yeah.
But now that I understand that, like, there's only so much you can do, and you don't always know what's really going on in a home, and things like that. My dad kind of saved me. He did save me from that moment. And my mom at the time, did nothing to get me back, and I was also angry at her for not doing anything because I was like, "What? Like, you're just gonna let me stay here? You're not gonna do anything?" Um, and that's something that we've worked through, but now that her and I have had those conversations, she said, like, "I knew that that was so much better for you than being here because I now, knowing that you were in a better place, felt like I could get out now." And she did.
Mhm. Mhm.
She It was her kind of breakthrough, um, and being able to kinda get out of that herself. And so we kinda shift now into the period where she is in Atlanta and now I'm in Virginia Beach. It's funny because when you hear about a daughter and a divorced parent, usually you hear that the daughter lives with her mother, especially
Yeah.
for throughout her teenage years, and so many people I when I tell people like, "Oh, I lived in Virginia Beach," and they're like, "Oh, who lives in Virginia Beach?" I say, "My dad." They're like, "Oh, where was your mom?" I get that question all the time, so this is the end to the story.
Mhm.
My mom lived in Atlanta, and I lived with my dad now in Virginia Beach, and, like I said in the beginning of all this, my parents both survival mode for so many years, and although my dad did really save me from the literal jail that I was living in, he also still had his own struggles that I soon found out about when I moved in with him. And he felt very emotionally detached in so many ways. Um, and I don't fault him for that because he wasn't doing the work that he needed to do. And neither was my mom. They, like I said, they were both surviving. And at the
Mhm.
time, and even 3, 4 years ago, I probably would still be so mad at them. Like, what? You guys had me as your kid, and you didn't do what you had to do as a parent." Like, those were the things I was saying. But now that I've been on this journey and I understand that, like, if you don't do the work, you become that parent that's absent. You become that parent that does the same things that your parent did to you. You continue those cycles, which is why I've honed in on doing the work because the last thing I ever want to do is put a child, another human
Yeah.
being through the same things that I went through.
I think also obviously, you and I, we both love our parents and we understand that they weren't given the best tools.
Yeah.
And that's why in this place in our life, it's important to anyone that if you have anger, resentment, if you're questioning why they did something, understand that they were not given the tools to love you properly. That
Yeah.
doesn't make it your fault. It now
Mhm.
makes it your responsibility so that you don't do these things to your children.
Yeah, it's the generational curses that we pass along in families. And if you think about it, if your parent did something to you, think about the kind of parent they had. And think about the kind of
Yeah.
parent they had, and then they had, and then they had, and it's just passing it along. And you've got to break that. And that's the mission that we've been on together is really breaking those things so that we can be better parents, better people in this world, and so that our kids can bring along new life for our families and new generations and happier generations and new patterns and habits. And, you know, although my parents didn't always get it right, I am so grateful that I chose them to be mine because I wouldn't be so empowered to be in this position and do the things that I'm doing.
And I think it also speaks to your love for freedom and travel and people, just the fact that you were
Ah,
confined for so
yes.
long. And now
Yes.
that you get to have this expression and experience all these different things, instead of staying in what was, instead of staying at the grave, you are expanding.
Yes. So it's interesting that you say that because that is the whole reason why I started traveling, because when I was in that solitary confinement, I would literally I had a little rocking chair and I would sit and look out my window and I would just dream of all the places I would go when I could get out and ooh, I would just like think to myself like I cannot wait till I can make my own
Yeah.
money. I'm going to see the world. I was like nobody's going to stop me. Nobody's going to tell me I can't go somewhere and I can't do something and I can't. "Oh, please, I don't have the money. Please, I'll find it." Like, I literally said to myself, "Nothing is going to stop me. Nothing."
Yeah.
And I think that's so a testament of me now. Like, I'm like, if you texted me tomorrow, "You wanna go here?" I'm like, "Hell yeah." I will never I tell my friends, I'm like, there is a 95% chance I'll say yes." Because I felt so trapped for so many years, and, it's a huge part of what life's travels has become, seeing me move in these spaces and come from where I've come from and gone through the things that I go through, and seeing the world inspire so many to do so. Because I remember the area that I grew up in, a lot of my friends had so much money and they would go to all these places. They would go to these islands and whatever. And I'd be like, wow, like people do that. Like people can do that.
Mhm.
I'm going to do that. I am going to do
Yeah.
and I have to kind of go back to Virginia Beach because Savannah raised me, but Virginia Beach made me. You know that saying? Yeah,
Yes.
Richmond Hill raised me, but Virginia Beach made me because that is where I found my voice. And I really, the reason why I got so emotional in your episode when you talked about your earliest memory was it your earliest, the best part of your childhood was your friends. Because
Mhm.
like I said, my dad did all that he could, but he was in survival mode. So that man was just paying his bills and being there when he could, but I had to like find my own, and
Good to live.
I had to find my own people and my own sense of family, and my friends were that. My friends were my world. Just being with their families and being with their parents and seeing how they navigated and operated, and they would take me on vacations, and we just did so many things, and I'm so fortunate for that. And last year I sat my two very best friends down and I said to them, like, you guys don't even understand, you saved me. Like, the two of them going from where I was and moving to Virginia Beach and meeting them, I could have been in such a dark space and could have been a depressed teenager, but meeting the two of them, like, was the best thing that could have ever happened to me because they just gave me a sense of life and like reminded me that like life can be so fun, and we just had the best memories together, and I hold on to those so dearly. And I had to sit them down and tell them that because we've all just kind of seen where we've ended up and the things that we went through together even in high school. um yeah, they truly were what saved me in those years, and I feel like I owe them and their families and so many of those people in Virginia Beach my everything. Like, when I'm a millionaire, I'm gonna probably go back and like I don't know what I'm gonna do, but I truly, truly feel like that was the space that not only showed me a whole new world, but also made me realize that there is so much more to this world. Because growing up in a really, really small town where there aren't very many Black people, and all I know is the solitary walls that I'm living in Virginia Beach, it was literally, I didn't even know. This is gonna sound really bad, but this is just my story. I didn't even know Blasians existed. I'm like, Black and Asian? No way, bro. Yo, that is so cool. I just remember when somebody told me they were Black and Asian, I was like, yo, Black and Asian? So cool. But it's because I was in this small town mindset and I was so enclosed in these walls, and even just like exploring my sexuality, I started doing that in Virginia Beach, and I just felt more alive and like I could be myself in that space. And being in that home with my dad, although he kind of had his own things going on, he did kind of just let me do me. He let me kind of go off and be with my friends. He trusted them, he trusted his family, which I'm so fortunate for because I really was able to come into myself. Like, he had his moments where he was also very strict, but he was just trying to protect me too while letting me do my own thing. And it's so
Mhm.
interesting, because he's a dad raising a teenage girl. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
there'd be so many moments where I'd be like, "Hey, dad, can I like it the smell good but not like the one that smells like your cologne, he'd be like, "It all does the same thing." Like, just like
Like, no,
little moments
dad.
like that. Right, exactly. I'm like, "But I wanna smell like flowers, not your cologne." Like, but
Yeah, I think going back to your friends though, that's a true testament to the fact that we always say some people in our lives are meant to be lessons, and the difficult
yeah,
relationships like with your stepfather teaches you things, but also there are some connections in our lives that are just meant to remind us that love is so pure and that there are people that
yeah,
are truly good. Like I think we all have to take those people that we have in our lives that are just pure sunshine and appreciate them because we all have
yeah,
them. And if you don't, just know that they're coming.
yeah.
And I think your friends exactly were that for you. It's like they reignited the light inside of you and allowed you to move forward and to who you're meant to be.
Yeah, and I think it's so fascinating that we both leaned on our friends. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that
Yeah.
we had families outside of the chaos that was going on in our own families that we were able to lean on and that kind of helped raise us and make us who we are today and bring light into our lives during dark times,
Yeah,
And
I mean, we're both still so close with our high school besties, and
yeah.
that's just because we needed each other at that time. Like my
Mhm.
best friend, she was my lifeline. We did
Yes.
everything together,
Everything.
and if I was having a bad day, she said, "Let's pack up and go to the beach." That's just how it was, and still to this day, I could call her at 2 a.m. and she's there.
Yeah, literally Kate was that friend that if you had a bad day, she was showing up to your door with ice cream. Every single time. Like, and it was just such a beautiful thing, and it became a habit with all 3 of us, Caitlin, Tyler, and I. Whenever one of us had a bad day, flowers and ice cream. We're showing up to each other's doors. Like, that was the ultimate feeling of love, and I
Yeah,
just growing up, I was, like, seeking that in so many ways, so it just felt so nice, and it truly saved me getting that from them. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, and that's beautiful, and I love that. And
Yeah,
I
yeah.
guess we do have so at the end of the last episode, you kind of asked me this question, which is if you could write a letter to the younger version of yourself about life, love, just anything that you've learned, what would you tell that young Naya?
I would tell her, 1, that you are so, so, so beautiful. So beautiful, regardless of how different you look, because your differences are what make you beautiful. I would also tell her that it gets better. It really gets better, and keep manifesting. Keep it up because
Yes.
you are really setting yourself up for a successful, happy, powerful, inspiring adulthood. And this is all happening for a reason. I think that's what I would also need to hear is this is happening for a reason. And I know it's so hard, but you are going to do great things one day. And we are.
Yeah.
We are right
Yeah,
now.
we are. We are right now.
Mhm.
And your story of just being in your bedroom and being in the solitary confinement
Mhm.
and mine of being in my bedroom alone, I think it shows that in these difficult situations, there is good things that come out of it. In the time, it doesn't seem like it. In the
Yeah.
midst of it, it never does. But if we had not had that chance to be alone, we would not have manifested what we have today.
Mhm. Mhm.
So, really take these difficult childhood situations, no matter how much anger you have, and try to pull out the good because there is. There's always lessons in it that we've all learned.
Yeah. I mean, and as adults, like I said, there were definitely periods after high school to now where I was so angry, and I think that you can relate to this as well, where we were just like, what was that?" Like, is
Yeah.
anybody going to answer this question? Because what just happened? And I saw that come out so much, until it got to the point where I was like, oh, I got to do something about this. I need help. I said
Yeah,
to
I
myself,
cannot stay angry.
yeah, I was like, I've gotta talk to somebody, and doing that and getting there and getting to the other side is why I'm able to sit here and even talk about it without bursting into tears and being genuinely angry. Like, it feels so weird to talk about this. Not weird. It feels so peaceful actually to talk about this and not be angry.
Yeah, or just not even bursting out in emotion because you've been holding it in so long.
Yeah, yeah. Wow.
Owning it as your truth.
Yeah, we've come so far.
We have. And
Oh.
imagine what we'll be like when we're 50, 60, 70. I tell Luke all the time, I'm like, when I'm a great grandma, I'm not even going to need to speak. It's just going to be nods, yes or no. Like, I'm just going to read the energy. That's what I'll be doing.
No, we're literally gonna be like Oprah when we're 50. But no, yes, in those years, we are going to be even wiser, you know? Like, we know so much now and have so much to share now. Cannot wait. Like, I'm so excited just to see how we'll continue to learn and grow through these podcasts and through these conversations and with so many other people that come into our lives, you know? It's wow. I'm so proud of us.
I'm so proud of you, Naya. Your story is beautiful. And I think it's really a story of the strength and the power of manifestation.
Mhm.
And there's a lot of people that I know will be able to relate to having those really hard times, having a force that seemed more powerful than you, displaying that power over you. And in those moments, you still understood that there was a fire inside of yourself. And I think that this story is going to help a lot of people.
Thank you so much for listening. I appreciate it. Thank you to all of our listeners for always coming back and listening to us yap every single week. We really, really appreciate it. And I love you, Janessa, and I love you guys.
I love you, Naya, and I love all of you. I love her.
Love her. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Love Naya.
Love Janessa. See you guys next time.
Bye.
Bye.